welcome to my channel. My name is Linda. I have some fun crafts for you today. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Today we'll be working on some Rustic Farmhouse home decor crafts featuring roosters. Let's get started with project number 1. For this project, I have some fabrics here. You can use as many or as little fabrics as you want. I do end up changing this one, but it is a linen type fabric I got at Hobby Lobby. I change it just because of the color. And then I got this kind of plaid fabric at Walmart. I think I've seen similar to Hobby Lobby. And this is like a placemat. I checked thrift stores and stuff for like textured placemats to cut up and use, to give our projects texture. Now I have created a free printable for you. Actually, there's 2 designs, the one that you're staring at and then the one to the left. Link to my blog in the description box where you can pick either one of those up and then you just print it onto some fabric. And there will be a video there explaining how to do that as well if you aren't familiar with that process. It's really easy to do and gives you nice kind of crisp imagery. Now for the main part of the bag, you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric, and I'm just inserting this part in here because you're going to see me work with a shorter piece. You need about 10-inch length, about 16 inches tall, because if you work with the shorter piece that I'm working with here, you're not going to have enough poof at the top to have your bag closure. So for the fabrics I wanted to use, I cut this placemat piece. It's about 7 length, about 8.5 inches tall. If you're a gluer, you can glue it on. I'm using batting. Again, if you're a gluer, you can glue batting on. And in my imagery, I printed it about 6 by 8. So you can just glue this all together, again, if you're a gluer. If you don't want any of this and you just want the imagery, you can just glue the imagery on however you want to do it. Now, I thought it would be fun to print out this whole imagery again and just cut out the chicken. I know it's a rooster video, but bear with me. Just cut out the chicken, putting some batting underneath that just so it pops it up and gives it 3D imagery. If you want to do it, great. If you're a gluer, glue it on. Of course, if you're a sewer, we'll sew it on. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Now, I'm going to come up about 2 inches from the bottom. Your top is going to have a longer edge because remember, we're using longer fabric, but about 2 inches from the bottom and then just kind of, make it even side to side, all right? Before I start sewing, I'm taking some like 220 grit sandpaper and I'm just sanding the edges. It gives it a softer look versus pulling on the threads. I think pulling on the threads almost makes it look crisper, where if you sand it, it distresses it more and just makes it look more fibrous, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so here I am, gluers, you're gluing yours on, sewers were sewing. Of course, I'm sewing on the placemat here, and I left the fringe on the side of that placemat because I thought it would be just fun adding in more texture. All right, now we're to the main imagery here, and I'm sewing that on, and then now I'm to the center, popping up our chicken for our rooster video here. I don't know, I just think it was fun, and I hope you like the printables I came up with. This is the first time I've done like printables like this. I mean, I'll usually give you quotes and that kind of thing, but this is the first time imagery. And if you'll notice, I've switched to the correct length of our bag. All right, so this is all together. Now we want to put our bag together. So you're going to put pretty sides together. I know on this fabric it's going to be hard to tell. Basically, sandwich your design in between. And if you're a gluer, you're going to come around 3 sides. You're going to leave 1 short side open. You're just going to glue between the fabrics along the edge, leaving the top open because it's a bag, right? And then if you're a sewer, of course, you're going to come down 1 long side, come down across the bottom and back up the other long side, leaving the top open, and then flip your bag right side out. All right, now we have Bella here. I know Bella's always joining us. It seems like Boston is like napping during whenever I'm crafting. Now you can see my fabric is different. It's kind of a lighter tan, kind of crinkly fabric. You can get this at Hobby Lobby. I just like the color better with the imagery. So once your bag is flipped, go ahead and stuff it. All right. And then I ripped, this is that plaid fabric. I ripped 2 great big long strips. They're about 2 inches wide. Now, before I add the ribbon, I'm going to go ahead and cinch the bag closed with rubber band. It'll help keep a nice shape for us. And then I'll start to take the fabric. Now, I wanted a double bow. I cannot tie a double bow for the life of me with 1 strip of fabric or ribbon. So I'm doing it in 2. It's easier. So there's 1. And in this one, I'm going to kind of kitty corner it. There we go, just like that. It's probably easier to watch and I can say, and then tie another bow, and then it's going to look like 2 bows. I know we're going to have 4 tails, but I'm going to fix that in just a minute. So 2 of the tails I'm wrapping around the back side. I'm going to tie it in a knot. I'm going to make it look like part of the wrapped fabric, come back around underneath and just kind of fold it over and glue it in place. And nobody knows the wiser that I used 2 strips of fabric and made 2 bows. All right, now I'm going to take Distress Oxide ink and Vintage Photo, and this is just a makeup brush. You can get them at like Dollar Tree if yours has them. They just sometimes are nice for brushing on when you want a little bit of a vintage look with ink onto your fabric or projects versus using like a foam sponge. You can totally use a foam sponge, but sometimes I like to pull out the brush just because it's fun. All right, now for our bag, I wanted a scoop, and all I have are these teeny tiny 2-inch scoops. But I did have these wooden spoons you get from Dollar Tree. They have like a rubber handle on it, so I pulled the rubber handle off. I cut probably 5 inches off the handle, and then I cut the spoon down more, just kind of with my jigsaw. And then I took my electric sander and I sanded it, really sanded the inside to make it look more indent. I did this all off camera, which is why I'm showing you that. And this is what I ended up with. And I promise it's the same spoon that I just showed you I started out with. I really sanded the inside and I sanded along the edges to make it look really distressed and stuff, like where you hold it. So it looked like it'd been, you know, scooping with it for years. And it's just got lots of worn from grabbing the handle of the scoop. And I do apologize, I didn't show the process, but it was just sitting there sanding really, and I just thought it was too boring. All right, now I want to color it up. I'm going to use this cognac stain. I know it looks gross, but got it at a garage sale that way for $1. I'm using Waverly Antique Wax, 1 mixed with water and 1 full strength. So I'm coming in with the mixed with water wax first, just kind of color it up. And then I'm going to come in with the cognac, and I'm going to like right in the center of our spoon scoop, give it our shadowing, and then along all the edges of, you know, where I tried to make it look worn with the sanding. Then I'm going to spritz water on it because I don't want it just red. I just kind of want that red to just slightly soak in a little bit. All right, and then once I dried that with my heat tool, now I'm coming in with the wax full strength. I'm coming right around the edge of that inner scoop to give it more shadowing, along the edges of the worn area, that kind of thing, wiping it off, just to make it look, the inside look even more deeper than it is, because that wood spoon's not that, you know, deep. So I want to make it appear to look deeper with the coloring. And then I'm coming in just with some, you know, sanding paper. It's like 120 grit, and just sanding it up, trying to hit all those high edges to make it not look so dark with the coloring, but, you know, also make it look more worn. And this is what we ended up with. This is what we started with. I think we did a pretty good job, right? Huh? Use what you have. And now I'm just taking some, you know, thicker diameter twine I get at Walmart, and I'm just going to kind of tie it to the bag, a little bow there. It was actually pretty firm in there, but then I decided just add a little glue. So I cut my tails how long as I want. I'm going to add a little bit of glue here, get that in place. That makes this project complete. We'll take a look at the results at the end of the video. All right, let's move into project number 2. This is really a rooster this time. All right, so what I've got here, this is a leftover tag. I know it's got a funny shape on it, and I drew this funny shape for a reason. At the end, I'm going to show you where I got my inspiration from. I'll show you kind of the before picture and what we ended up with. So I'm just drawing a funky shape on it, all right? And then these are flowers. You can pick these up at Walmart, and I just kind of like cut them with my scissors in half, and they look horrible, but I'll sand them. But you see here, I've just got some really, you know, good serrated scissors, and I'm cutting what I need. I'll do 2 of these together because we'll glue them together for the tail. And then for the top, I was going to use this, but I ended up switching to some hearts like this one. This one I cut for a nose, and then I did 2 more. I did the same thing, but kept the top half. Here it is for the crown of the rooster, but you could use the flower shape. All right, and then you can cut this out of foam board or balsa wood, however you want to do it. See, so this is what I've got here. These are my pieces all cut out, sanded, and ready to go. Now, I'm going to use some scrapbook paper. You do not have to. You can totally use it painted. See this side? This was the back of the tag originally, and I almost went with it, but for some reason I wanted to use scrapbook paper. But see how cute it would be just painted and distressed and using your pieces? Anyway, so what I'm doing is tracing it, you know, this is going to be my back side. It's all going to get painted anyway. So tracing the side that I want to be the front. And then I'm just coming in about 1/4 of an inch. I'm redrawing the perimeter to cut it short all the way around. You don't have to redraw it. Just for me, it's easier to have lines to cut it out with versus just kind of freehanding it so that I get it more even all the way around when I do cut that excess off. Okay, it's just kind of my way to do it. All right. And then I'm taking this to my sewing machine, and I am sorry, I don't know why it's not quite in focus, but it's just a little strip here. I'm just sewing on my paper like it's regular fabric. I actually have like a size 14 needle on my machine. My old machine has to be a like size 9 or 10 needle. It just depends on your machine, and just sew on it. No special thread, nothing. You don't have to sew on it if you don't want to. If you want the look of sewing but not sewing, you can use like a fine Sharpie marker and make little dash lines. All right, here's my Waverly Antique Wax mixed with water again. When I have light colored wood, I often 98% of the time will come in with the Waverly Wax first and dry it before I go over it with the color paint I want. That way when I sand and distress it, a little bit of that wax will kind of come around the perimeter to give it a little bit more of a two-tone look, I guess. All right, this is just some yellow and orange paint kind of mixed for the nose with a little bit of like a taupey brown as well, so it's not such a bright yellow orange. And then I'm coming in with some red paint here. I think this is Red Barn from Dixie Belle. And I'm doing it on the crown. I'm doing another heart for like a little sign that you can see I'm painting here. I'm going to add a heart to it. So that's just like a ruler. I forgot to show that. Not a ruler, excuse me. A paint stick that I cut about a 6-inch portion off of. And I'm going to add the heart to it. And then, of course, I'm coming into the main piece and painting that. And that is with Dixie Belle chalk paint in the color Drop Cloth. Now I'm coming in and distressing everything with 120 grit sandpaper. And you can kind of see that Waverly Wax coming around it a little bit. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. But I just still think it adds to it. So those pieces are done. And then I'm going to glue my two top of my hearts together for my crown. And then now I'm coming in while that glue's setting up and I'm distressing. See, on this you can really see the Waverly Wax coming around that drop cloth. That's why I do it. All right, now I'm going to glue my paper down to my rooster here. And then I'm drilling a hole with a tiny drill bit to add my heart. All right, so I'm kind of here figuring out my little heart where I'm going to drill. I'm just going to drill right in the center. And then I will have a free printable for you on my blog, link the description box. There'll be pictures there so you know which is which, and plus each link has the title of it. And it'll be in a PDF and a PNG for you. I'll just do this off camera, but of course I cut it out of vinyl. I'll attach it. Now that's ready to go, and I've just got some black paint mixed with water and a fan brush. Dip my fan brush in that paint, and then I tap the fan brush to get sprinkles, and I'm just kind of doing it all over my pieces. Some people will use a toothbrush, that kind of thing. I like to use the fan brush because you get a little bit less splatters, and for me, I have more control with it. Now I'm gluing the beak on, but you'll see it back off in a minute because as I'm gluing cardboard to the back of this, and you'll see why for that in the minute, I decided my beak needed to be popped up more. So here I am, I've got cardboard on there, and then I'm re-gluing my beak back down. Just personal preference. All right, now I'm taking a piece of wire. I think it's like 18 gauge wire. I'm just doing a little curly Q on one end. I'm going to put it through the hole of the heart. And then I take some flat pliers and I squish that curly Q part down to the wire. And now on the back side of the heart, I'm taking my little round nose pliers and I'm making another curly Q on the back side. And in the flat nose pliers, I squish that curly Q down on the back side, and it's going to help hold our heart stable between the curly Qs so the heart doesn't spin around. And then I'm going to put that wire through the hole in the sign, cut off the excess, and then push the remaining piece of that wire back against the sign. And now I'm adding just a piece of cardboard over. I actually move it over that wire a little bit. I'm going to come in and splatter this as well because I splattered everything else. I want this to match a little bit. Just tiny splatter, not too much. And then I'm taking some quick hold glue. This is like an E6000 derivative. It's from E6000, makers of it. And I'm putting it on the edge of the crown and on the edge of the tail. And I like to let that sit a minute because I find that once it gets a little bit tacky, it sticks more quickly. Now I'm adding glue around the cardboard I added, and I'm adding some moss to the back of the sign. I add the cardboard so that the cardboard is sticking to our rooster, not the moss. Because you can add moss onto the rooster and then you try to glue the sign down and it might come off because all you're doing is gluing to the moss. Is that understandable? I want to glue it to the rooster. All right, now I'm sticking my crown and my tail on. My glue is sat long enough just to be a little tacky. And then I'm adding some glue to the cardboard so that that sticks to the sign. I'm attaching that. And then I've just got a little twine. I've tied a little bow. I'm going to attach that underneath. And then I like to kind of glue my tails in place into kind of a, squiggly, wrinkly, crinkly design, however I want to do it. I don't want them just to fall straight. And then I'll cut off the excess once I get it glued how I want. I'll cut off the excess on the tails a little bit. That was nice, a rest in my voice, huh? All right, here I am cutting off the excess, and then I'm just going to add a little button right to the center of that bow. And now I'm going to add some eyes. I'm just using the flat end of a paintbrush, dipping it in black paint, and I let this be like this for a couple days, but every time I would look at this, it bothered me. So I'm going to change the eyes up just a bit, but the black paint's cute, but it bothered me. Now I've got just like a piece of wood here, scrap wood that I've painted in distress because the sign and the heart make it want to tip forward. So I'm adding this piece of wood on the back side of the rooster to give it a little bit more on the back and to help it stand up better. All right. So eyes, I have these little leftover wood circles when I use my laser machine and I cut stuff out and like insides of letters or something like that. I save all these little pieces, painting them black, and then I'm gluing them where I had painted the eyes. So it makes it a little bit more 3D looking. And then that made me feel much better, but you could still go with the paint. That looks perfectly wonderful too. We'll take a look at the results at the end of the video. But first, I wanted to show you my inspiration. I don't often do this. Now, I go to Pinterest a lot. When I have an idea, I'll go there and, okay, has anybody else done it? If they have, what did they do with it? How could I do it differently? That kind of thing. But I came across this picture, and it's actually a picture of a set of 3 metal roosters you could buy from a store. All right, so these metal roosters became our wood rooster. What do you think? Let's move on to our last project, number 3. For this project, I'm going to do like wood and fabric mixed. I'm going to start with one of these crates. I like this one because you can see it open, although this one works better with the size for the rooster, but I still end up going with the small one. This is an oval wood. Both of those are Dollar Tree. This is Dollar Tree. I'm going to cut like a bottom couple of inches off. I'm going to use this heart in its entirety. And again, with a couple of these flowers, I'm going to cut it for a tail. And then I'm going to cut it another piece for the crown. All right. Also, I have this little thin wood tag. I've got a couple of these. I'm using it just with some serrated scissors. It's so thin that I could cut my beak out with it. Okay, I'm going to cut 2 of those because I want it to look thick. There we go. Okay, I cut and sand everything off camera. Here's our oval shape with a couple of inches cut off. The heart's by itself. I didn't do anything to it. The nose, just sanded that up. Here's the crown. Now the crown is like 3 scallops and the tail was 4 scallops from those flowers. And this is just a piece of scrap wood. It's like 2 by 4, not even 2 by 4, like 1.5 by 4. I'm going to use fabric and paper mix for this. You could choose to do all fabric. I have a free pattern for you. Link to my blog in the description box again. This piece here is to use if you're doing all fabric. Whether you use wood or fabric, you're going to need this, the foot, okay? And I've got this in 2 pieces. I'll show you how to connect it in a minute. You're going to need the beak, all right? And then I gave you 2 options for the crown. You're going to need the little heart or a heart for the wattle. I gave you this and this, like if you're sewing to have it more exaggerated, or this if you're just, you don't have the flower shapes and maybe you're cutting this out of balsa wood or foam board or something like that. I'm not going to show how to do the sewing portion. It's just kind of there for you sewers that already know how to sew. All right, so my fabrics, 2 of them that came from Walmart, and then some batting. I cut 2 pieces of batting and then this kind of distressed looking brown fabric for the front of our rooster. All right, now the leg, it's 2 pieces like I said earlier. I did it that way so if you're a sewer and you want to like take the foot and you want to put it in between two pieces of fabric, insert it that way, or you can just tape it together like I did and cut it out in one unit. Again, I'm just not going to go into that, but if you know how to sew and know what you're doing, it's there for you. So for each foot, I've got 2 pieces of batting and 2 pieces of fabric. Of course, I'll sandwich the batting between the fabric. And then for the beak, I cut 2 pieces of batting, but I think I'm going to look at it here. I'm going to see how tall it gets, and then I decide, yeah, it just looks too tall to me, so I'm only going to use 1 piece of batting. I'm just letting you see my thought process. All right, so for the crown and the tail and the little wattle thing, it is called a wattle, right? I've got this fun and funky scrapbook paper I've had for years. I already traced around the pieces, and I redrew my perimeter just kind of like we did, in the previous project. My fabric here, I cut short all the way around, and then my paper pieces, as you can see here off camera, of course, cut them, and you can see how they're short all the way around because I like to see my wood perimeter. That's just how I am. I'm gluing my 2 pieces of beak together because it's really thin wood. All right, I want it to look thicker, and then I'm using my Waverly Antique Wax mixed with water and Dixie Belle chalk paint in the color drop cloth and Barn Red. And like I said, this looked better size-wise with this, but I didn't like that you couldn't see through it. So I choose the smaller one. It ends up looking okay because I wanted to see through it because we're going to add moss in there, and I wanted moss to peek out between the slats and stuff. So on this particular crate, again, these are all Dollar Tree. Most everything's Dollar Tree except the flour and my little scrap wood, right? That's easy enough to get to. The flour, again, Walmart, they were like 67 cents a piece. I'm just Waverly Antique Waxing mixed with water on the crate. That's it. I probably didn't need to do the inside, but I did it. Okay, and then now, of course, all my other pieces, I'm doing that wax method first, of course, with the water before I come in and add the paint so that when I distress, we all know the routine, that wax will kind of come out around our paint. And then my little piece of scrap wood there. All right, so my crown, my tail, and my little wattle in this Barn Red paint. I'll paint both sides of the crown and the tail because you will see it from the back side of the project. And then my beak, I'm actually painting in white, not yellow color, because remember, coloring with fabric, covering it with fabric. And then, of course, I'm painting my sign and our rooster. And forgive me if I call this at one point a chicken or a rooster. We all know it's a rooster. It's just my brain trying to think ahead as I'm doing, voicing over here, and sometimes it confuses and calls it a chicken. All right, I've got another piece of wood here. It's perfect size. I'm going to attach it to the back of our rooster because we need extra gluing surface so that it can sit on top of our crate. So I'm just painting it up. All right, and then now I need to fill the inside of the crate. So this is just a piece of salvage wood. I'm not going to paint it or anything like that. It looks fine, and I'm adding another piece of scrap wood and then another piece of scrap wood. It's probably about a 1/2 inch down from the top of the crate, and then that's how the, rooster will sit on top of that. So I'm going to put all my little pieces of wood together here. Perfect. I'm just like setting it in here for now. And then I will glue that whole ensemble into the crate in a little bit, but I just kind of set it in the crate to set up. Does that make any sense? It probably doesn't matter. Anyway, glued all my scrap wood pieces together, and they're sitting in the crate to set up. All right, now I'm coming in and distressing all my pieces up. Again, you see how that Waverly Antique Wax comes out around the paint. I really like that, process. Love how it looks. Gives it more of a rustic look to me, but, you do you, right? All right, and I'm going to just sand up my crate a little bit. I don't sand the inside, of course. Just doing the outside around kind of the sharp edges. And then I'm going to come in and do my crown and my tail and my wattle. I'm silent for a minute because I'm like, is that called a wattle? Forgive me, people, if it's not. All right, now what I'm doing is I'm spot gluing my legs together to hold it so I can go sew around it. So I've got 1 piece of fabric, 2 pieces of batting, and another piece of fabric on top. If you're a gluer, you're just going to glue all that together. If you're using batting for, the front of your rooster, you're going to glue all that together, glue your beak together. I'm going to, of course, sew around everything, and then I'm going to sew around these papers as well. All right? Again, I like the sewing on the papers because I just think it gives it a little bit of personality, and I'm leaving this in here because you can see how I'm kind of going around the curved edges. If you're just kind of starting out and sewing on your papers, sometimes you have to like lift your lever to lift your foot up to make the turn when you're going around those curved edges. That's why I left that in there so long to show you. And then of course now I'm coming around. I've got about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just letting my edges all hang out. You all know how I like to do that. I like to just leave my edges hanging out. That's why, like on the feet, I just sandwiched it together. I'm just leaving those edges all hang out. I'm not trying to do it real pretty like, you know, an advanced sewer might do. They might put, you know, the right sides of the fabric together and then turn it, you know, sew it and then turn it right side out, that kind of thing. I want it to look rustic, let it hang out. I don't care if the batting is a little bit wider, you know, hanging out of the edges of the fabric and stuff. I just think it gives it that kind of rustic country look. All right. Oh my gosh, when we go to put the legs, anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. Now what I'm doing is I'm coming in with the sandpaper, distressing around it just like we did on our first project. It's nice and quick and easy. You could skip this part if you want to. You don't have to worry about it. But I like that frayed look. Okay, and then we're going to start attaching here in just a minute. I'm taking the open end of my scissor blades and I'm scraping along my paper pieces to give it a rustic look as well. This is totally optional. Now I start to glue my main rooster body down and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I got to glue the legs on first. So I set it over here. All right. And then I'm going to glue my legs on about 1.5 inches up from the bottom. All right. And I determined that length because I kind of sat this whole ensemble on top of the crate to see how tall I needed it to be. All right. Now, because I put the legs on, even though there's batting on top of or behind my main, you know, rooster body fabric, I need to fill the space of the fabric from the legs. So I cut another piece of batting here. I actually cut 2 because we're going to need more later to take that space. Since I have glue on this, it'll glue to that, but this is still not glued down to my wood piece, right? All right, so that's sitting over to the side. Now I'm gluing my papers down onto my wood pieces. You don't have to use paper on your wood pieces. They could just be painted. All right, it would look just as cute. Now, when I put my wood pieces down, they are taller than the legs, right? So now I have to come in with another piece of batting for the center here. Because you want everything, you want that top body piece to lay level across your crown, your tail, and your legs. All right, haven't still glued it down yet because I want to get my little, hopefully called a wattle. I want the paper on that. And then I laid my beak down so I can make 2 little dots with my Sharpie marker. And then now I'm going to glue the fabric to my beak and then I'm going to come back to my body. Now you could just stay with the Sharpie marker and make some eyeballs. You can put some buttons on there. You could do like paintbrush like we did in the last project. But I'm just using some beads and some thread and I'm sewing them on. I'm coming from the back to the front, adding a bead. And then right next to that bead, going from the front to the back. Once I get both of those eyeballs on in that fashion, I will just go ahead and tie it off on the back, make a couple of knots. All right, done. Now we can glue our little extra piece of batting down here. We can glue our tail on and we can glue our crown on. Get everything into position. And then we'll glue our main rooster body on the front. Perfect. So cute. Then we'll glue our beak on. And so you could stop here, but I thought the wattle was cute. And of course, at the end, I will show you why we had a wattle. I'll show you my inspiration again. All right, I'm gluing my little extra piece of wood here on so that our rooster has ample surface to go onto our crate. And then again, this will be a free printable for you. Link to my blog in the description box. I hope I've said that enough today so you know where to find these. All right, I've just cut it out of vinyl. Again, you'll have a PDF and a PNG. And you can just write it on if you have beautiful handwriting. I'm going to use vinyl because my handwriting isn't as pretty. Perfect. And then once I get it on, all my wood pieces have sat together enough that the glue's set. So now I'm going to glue that to the inside at the bottom of the crate. All right, let that set for a while. Now I'm going to drill some little holes on each side of our sign. You know the wire's coming in, just like we did with the heart before. And I'm taking 2 pieces of wire and just using some round needle nose pliers and making some curly cues. at both ends, and then I'll set that aside for a minute. We'll come back to it because before I do that, you know the splatter's coming in. I know I have to add splatter. Sometimes I add a lot, sometimes I add a little, but to me, it just needs to be there. All right. This particular one, I added a little, and I was going to stop there, but I was like, nope, I need to add splatter to the rest of our rooster, and it looks really cute on the fabric, right? Okay. Then once all the paint is dry, you're like, I don't know, I haven't seen the whole thing yet. At the end, you'll think it's really cute on the fabric. All right. So now I got the wire through the holes, and then what I do is just kind of, like you'll see here, because I talked over the other part, twist it sideways, and then I squish that curly Q against the sign, and then I cut off the excess on the back, and I push the long piece against the back of the sign. Does that make sense? You can see here what I did. All right, now I'm cutting some cardboard again, because again, not that I'm going to add moss, but I want to cover up the whole back so that it looks nice, and I need it to be a little bit thicker to glue to our rooster. All right, now I'm bringing in some moss. I'm just using a ruler to get that in along the skinny sides. My main thing here is I want to cover up all that wood so that I don't see it between the slats. So I come along the front here and I cover it up, and I will trim it because I can't stand a whole lot of moss. I like just a little bit of moss, but enough moss that it makes it cute. Like that would be too much there. I have to cut a lot of that off, but I want to cover that wood. All right, and then I'm coming in with our glue here, and I'm going to glue our rooster down, moving moss out of the way to the top of our crate and forward so it comes all the way to the edge of the front of the crate. And then I'm going to use some glue and more moss to cover up that back part. Not necessarily the rooster, but the back part of the wood that's inside the crate so that that looks nice. And then I wanted to work with it some more, so I've just got it kind of clamped down so I can continue working. Got the rooster clamped down into the, crate area. Aren't the legs cute? They look so cute just straight forward, but I'm going to glue them down a little bit. All right, and then I want to glue the sign down. So now I'm gluing them down to the front of the legs, and then off camera, the back of the top of the sign, I'll glue that as well to the rooster body, if that makes sense. So the sign's actually kind of slanted on there. It's not straight, slanted toward the back of the roosters. That makes sense. That makes this project complete minus the clamps. And now here is my inspiration on this one as well. On Pinterest, I saw this old pattern. I think it's old, of a rooster, and I'm like, I'm going to make that between wood and fabric and paper, made up my pattern, and that's how this came about. What do you think? You enjoyed all of these projects today. Okay, I know one was like a chicken and not really a rooster, but you know what? They're in the same family. We're gonna call it good, right? Leave me a comment down below and let me know which project you would like to make. Please give this video a thumbs up, share it if you'd like. And if you walked in here for the first time, you're just checking things out, you're digging what you saw, make sure before you click off, you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss out on another video from me. And the next video is going to be a couple of projects, a chicken and a rooster. And then we'll go on to something else. But I had some chicken rooster ideas, so I had to get them out and share them with you. Now, before I go, I'm going to give you one final thought. What's that famous quote, our attitude determines our altitude? Basically, it's stating that our mindset and approach to life will ultimately determine our success and achievement, but nothing will happen and nothing will succeed without God. In the Bible, the book of Mark, chapter 10, verse 27, it says, Jesus looked at them and said, "With man, this is impossible, but not with God. All things are possible with God." You see, without God in our lives, we might approach this differently. Our success might be focused on achievements for personal gain, or it may be based on material wealth and social status. With God in our lives, our success should be based on humility, selflessness, and the compassion of Jesus. Focusing on a Christ-centered attitude versus worldly pursuits will ultimately achieve a more joyful, fulfilled life, and it will significantly influence and promote the long-term success we want to achieve. Also, our success in life depends on how closely we follow God. In the Bible, the book of Proverbs, chapter 8, verses 17 through 21, it says, "I love those who love me, and those who seek me find me. With me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and prosperity. My fruit is better than fine gold. What I yield surpasses choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness along with paths of justice, bestowing a rich inheritance on those who love me and making their treasuries full." Now, it's not to say that God's favor upon a Christian will not include material wealth, but the key to honoring and being thankful to God for this favor is to use this blessing of wealth and success wisely and generously, and to avoid making it a source of pride. Our goals and ideals of success should not focus on what we have, but they should reflect that of Jesus. The real path to success is to better ourselves in Jesus. We should work toward our goals with morals and faith in mind. We should achieve what God has for us and what God wants for us, all the while carrying peace and kindness. We shouldn't be afraid to take risks or try new things or improve our skills to elevate our lives, knowing that we have God on our side because He wants what's best for us. He just doesn't want us focused on selfish gain or worldly desires. In order to succeed with this, we must live lives pleasing to God with the favor He has bestowed upon us. In the Bible, the book of Proverbs, chapter 21, verse 21, "Whoever pursues righteousness and love finds life, prosperity, and honor." With all this said, let's change the wording of that famous quote just a bit. Our attitude in Christ determines our altitude. Christian author Joyce Meyer wrote, "Our attitude determines our life. It's important to have a positive attitude because God is positive, and when we are positive, it releases Him to work in our lives." Bible author God wrote, "In everything he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him." 1 Samuel 18:14. I thank you for sharing your time with me, and I'll talk with you again soon. Bye.